NFR.
NFR Extra is a podcast dedicated to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo and features icons and personalities that embody the Western lifestyle.
It's escapism, man. Like, I think that people that are from the East Coast that listen to my music, they listen to it so they feel like they're in the Rocky Mountains, you know?
Right, yeah.
Whereas me, like, I'm in the Rocky Mountains, so I'm going to listen to Eminem and Blink-182 and the Beatles to make me feel like I'm not in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful about music. Every time I write a song, my goal is always to try and change the world, or to change the way that people look at the world. And a lot of the times it's like, man, that's a lot of pressure, one. Two, it's like, that tends to lead me in the direction of being curious and very spiritual in my lyrics.
This is Brylan Bentley, and you're listening to NFR Extra.
Well, Brylan and I were talking earlier, and I usually don't get nervous for interviews, but I'm excited and a little anxious about this one because we're talking to Ian Munsick today. And Ian, if you will, take us back to when you got started and how you got involved in music.
Yeah, so man, I was born on a cattle ranch in northern Wyoming. My dad and my two older brothers all play music. So I didn't really have a choice growing up, man. It was always music in the house, piano and violin and the guitars just scattered around our household growing up. And, I was always looking up to my two older brothers who were playing, and then my dad who also plays. So that was kind of, I never really remember a exact time where I was like, oh gosh, I want to be a musician. It was just always kind of there. And obviously growing up on a ranch, that kind of Western lifestyle has always influenced my music as well as my brothers and my dad's music too. So man, it's just all kind of been there from the very start.
So Brylan and I were talking a little bit before we got started, and a couple of the words that came up were not only unique, but real. So tell us a little bit more about that background and your rural roots, if you will.
Yeah, man, I always go back to, there's so much music out there that is kind of following the latest trend. And that's just kind of how art and the culture are, just in general, not only in country music, but I think in every kind of music and in every kind of art style too. But for me, man, Wyoming is such an isolated place. There's not a lot of outside influences that penetrate the culture of Wyoming. It's kind of how it was back in the old days, and those influences are still there now. And there's not a lot of modern influences that get into the culture, which is why I love it, because it's literally like stepping back in time. And so for me as an artist and as a songwriter and as a producer of music, I think that's really what helps me stay in my own lane and not get caught up in what's hot right now in country music or what's the latest trend.
What side did you lean more towards when you were getting involved? Was it actually the songwriting side, or did you jump in as an actual artist or singer?
That's a good question. So growing up, my dad had my two older brothers and I play in a band with him called the Munsick Boys. And man, we would play rodeos and weddings and dances and just everything that we could throughout the Rocky Mountain region. So that was kind of my first experience performing music, and that was at a pretty young age. I mean, I remember being on stage when I was 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
And obviously, you know, I would write some stuff, but at 10 years old, you know, they were more just kind of like little titties, if you will, not real songs.
Right.
So that was kind of what I knew that I wanted to do from the beginning, was be on stage. But songwriting came not too far after that. When I was in high school, I just loved writing lyrics and writing melodies. And so I always consider myself a songwriter, just because I know that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now as an artist without the tunes that I wrote, you know?
Absolutely. So I guess this is kind of a out there far-fetched left question. How did you get to the air quotes of Nashville then? If you were songwriting, like what was your steps on kind of branching out then? How were you discovered, I guess is the best way.
Yeah. So I moved to Nashville for college, actually. So when I was 19, I moved there. I didn't know anybody there, but I feel like the college gave me a built-in community there that all spoke the common language of music. And all of the players in my band I went to college with, my wife, who's also my manager, I went to college with. A lot of the people that have helped me get to where I am now, I met in college. So that was very, very helpful. But I would say really it was my wife that helped me get into the industry of Nashville. She knew early on when she moved to Nashville that the college was just kind of the gateway to get in. And the real stuff that's happening was on Music Row. And our college, you know, like the college in general is it's its kind of own the community, and it takes an effort to get out and experience the real industry that you're studying for, you know. So she knew that at a young age, and she kind of stepped out and she met the right people, and through her, she really helped me get with the right people that eventually led to my publishing deal and my record deal. And man, I would definitely not be here without her. That's for sure.
Well, you're definitely meeting some of the right people, because that collaboration with Cody Johnson, that was the first time I heard you. I'm always late to the game. I'm always late to the game with new music, just because I'm a father of two and I'm not cool anymore like I was in college.
Yeah, man, I hear you. Me too.
But when I heard your voice, that there's a big difference between you and Cody, and you have a really unique sound. Is that something that has always been with you, or is that something that's formed over time?
Man, honestly, I think it's always been with me. Again, I always go back to growing up in Wyoming, you know. In Wyoming, I was not listening to Nashville country music. It was on in the radio, but those tunes didn't relate to the lifestyle that I was living. It was more like Ian Tyson, Chris Ledoux, Tom Russell, more of like the cowboy country poets that really I could see my lifestyle in. And the Texas country also had a big place in that. Through high school, the Texas country I found to be more raw and more real, especially in that time period, late 2000s, like Randy Rogers and
Yes.
people like that. And then obviously the one that really put Texas country in the mainstream was, of course, Cody Johnson. And I remember listening to him when I was 18, still living in Wyoming. And I was like, damn, now that is a guy that I could see taking real country music back into the mainstream. And that's exactly what he's done. So for us to be on that collab, man, was just a dream come true. And it was really a full circle moment for me, because up until Cody, I did not listen to mainstream country music. It was more red dirt, underground, alternative stuff. So to be on there with him and really just to call him a friend, man, has been pretty incredible over the last few years.
So is that kind of like your pinch me moment then? I mean, where...
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, man, I would say so. He asked me to go on tour with him in 2021, and that was obviously like a big pinch me moment. But I remember probably the biggest pinch me moment after he agreed to sing Long Live Cowgirls with me on the record, hearing his voice and my voice harmonize with each other for the first time in the studio. That was like, oh my goodness, like that was just an amazing moment that I'll take with me to the grave, man. It was pretty cool.
I can't even believe that. I could only imagine. I mean, meeting you right now and having a few conversations with Cody, I could only imagine what that moment was like in the studio
Yeah.
together.
It was cool. It was cool, definitely.
Let's take a quick pause, and we'll be right back. Looking for NFR video content and features? It's all in one place at /Las Vegas NFR. You will find unique features like the top 35 most memorable moments since 1985, the top 60 NFR contestants of all time, NFR champions recaps, custom NFR videos, and much more. You'll also find NFR performance recaps, insider tips, and interviews you might have missed along the way. Once you dive in, you'll find a lot more great content. There's something for all rodeo fans, because legacies and memories are made in Vegas.
I want to talk about Cowboy Killer, because I feel like this song really launched, and I don't know whether it was the TikTok side of it, but tell me about Cowboy Killer and how that came about.
It is the perfect counter to the rest of my music. You have Long Live Cowgirls, which is extremely on one end of the spectrum of country music. And then you have Cowboy Killer, which is pretty much the exact opposite end of the spectrum in country music. But that's also what I've always aimed to do, is to make sure that I have my lane, but make it as broad as I can. And, you know, the grown up of 90s, baby, like I loved Eminem. I loved Blink-182. I love George Strait. I mean, all over the spectrum, you know? So I always thought that if I could cohesively package modern day hip hop drums with real instruments like banjo and fiddle and mandolin that had kind of been a staple for me, that it would be a kind of innovative production. And I think that's what Cowboy Killer is. And it also is a reminder to me that every time I write a song, my goal is always to try and change the world, or to change the way that people look at the world. And a lot of the times it's like, man, that's a lot of pressure, one. Two, it's like, that tends to lead me in the direction of being serious and very spiritual in my lyrics. Whereas Cowboy the Killer is a reminder of like, hey man, just have a good time. People listen to music to forget about the struggles in their lives or to have a good time on the weekend out with their friends. So I think that's kind of that's probably why people lean into that one. And then obviously when I play live, I think that TikTok has gotten a hold of it, but I do a dance move called the belt buckle shuffle.
Yep.
And it's like I'm twirling my hips around, holding my belt. And man, I think that's usually the point of our live show, that people will break out their phones and post it on TikTok and stuff. So I definitely think that TikTok has helped launch that song too.
Well, I can honestly say I think this is the first time that Eminem and Blink-182 have been referenced on this podcast. but I mean, if you're busting ice and shoveling snow in Wyoming, there's no better way to get out aggression than to play Eminem and Blink-182.
That's right. Hey man, and many times that has happened. I mean, I remember one summer on the ranch, it was my job to go around all of the barbed wire on the whole ranch and repair every line of it. And man, I remember throwing on the Beatles, their first album, and by the time I got to the last album, I was done. But man, that is a lot. That is a lot of music to go through to fixing up barbed wire, man. But yeah, I mean, I think it's escapism, man. Like I think that people that are from the East Coast that listen to my music, they listen to it so they feel like they're in the Rocky Mountains, you know?
Right, yeah.
Whereas me, like, I'm in the Rocky Mountains, so I'm going to listen to Eminem and Blink-182 and the Beatles to make me feel like I'm not in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful about music.
Well, when you dive into some of your deeper tracks, I'm glad you mentioned your area where you're from, because there is almost a haunting spiritual feel to some of your songs. Like, I mean, I listen to White Buffalo, and I'm not a music producer, but there's almost like a hollow sound in the background. Like there's an open space. So I mean, is that obviously that's what you're going for, correct?
Yeah, man. Yeah. You know, producing music is one thing that you don't really hear people talk about too much, especially in country music, because it's more about the lyrics, you know, and that's what's so awesome about it. But the production aspect of it, I've always thought to be equally as important, because if the lyrics are saying one thing and the production takes you somewhere else, then it's not going to be a good song, you know? Whereas no matter how good the lyrics are, the production can either screw it up or make it the best that it can ever be. So I always really try and be extremely involved in the production of my music, because that's how I got to where I am. So just having another person produce my music is having another person create my sound. And for me, I always want the people listening to my music to hear it from me. So I play a lot of the instruments in my music. I write all my songs. I produce all my songs. So I really feel like you're hearing what's in my brain. And I feel like that's what makes it so unique.
That's awesome.
So talking about production and how you are so involved on the music side of it, what about the concert and performance side of it? Because that's something that is noticeably different for each artist as a whole. what is kind of your path when you start looking at that? Do you change up the middle sections of each concert? How does that go for location? How does that work for you?
You know, being on stage is I love it. I kind of black out for 90 minutes when I'm on stage. It just, man, it flies by every time. And for me, we kind of have the same groove down for our live show now, just because we play a lot of live shows around the country. But it's different, especially now, because we just played in the Northeast in Boston last week, and then in 2 weeks we're playing the NFR in Vegas. So It's like, man, those are two totally different cultures.
Yeah.
But again, it always goes back to the escapism. People, when they come to an Ian Munsick show, I want them to feel like they're in Wyoming for 90 minutes. And for me, one of the greatest entertainers in country music that doesn't get near enough credit is Chris Ledoux. Mm-hmm. We would not have the Garth Brooks if it wasn't for Chris Ledoux, but not a lot of people know that. But man, he gave 100% of his energy every single time he hit the stage, and that's exactly what I do. I have a hard time containing myself on stage, but it's because I know how hard people work for their money to get into the concert. I know how much time and effort goes in to them traveling there, leaving their kids at home, trying to do all of that stuff just to have a good time, So when I step off stage, I want to make sure that it's the best concert that they've ever been to, and that they're like, damn, I would go see him again. So those are just always my two goals for the live show.
Well, that authenticity you were talking about earlier, in my opinion, that's what makes Chris Ledoux timeless. I mean, the fact that it's real. If you're a world champion bareback rider and you sing a song like Bareback Jack, you're not BSing anybody.
No, exactly.
So that's what to me makes it timeless. But speaking of timeless classics, before we transition to the Vegas stuff, I looked on your YouTube music page. You re-recorded The Grinch. That was awesome. But I want to know what was that's one of my Christmas favorites, movie and song. But I want to know what was the thought process behind doing that.
Man, so I'm not a big Christmas music guy.
Okay.
I love Christmas. I love the holidays, but Christmas music, golly, man. For one thing, they play it too early. It gets played for 2 months.
Amen.
2 months. And that's all you hear. And it's like, golly, man. And it's usually the same 10 tunes over and over again, just redone by the different artists. So for me, when my record label told me that, they're like, hey, I know that you don't want to do this, but you need to record at least one Christmas song. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, because one, not a lot of people have done it. And two, it captures my Christmas music spirit, which is more on the Grinchy end of the spectrum. So yeah, man, that's kind of how that came to be. Then again, for that one, I think it's all in the production. Having there be the banjo and the kind of spooky fiddle lines that are in there, and the background vocals that just kind of make it a little bit eerie and not what you think of when you think of Christmas music,
Well, that's awesome.
I love it. We're going to jump into Vegas for a second because you'll be joining us at the Mirage on the 9th and 10th. But before that, you are coming out to Vegas and hosting a little deal downtown, the White Buffalo Voices of the West. Tell me a little bit about how this has come about and what you are talking about there.
Yeah, so this is a documentary about Native American cowboys. And growing up not too far away from the Crow Reservation, I realized that when I traveled outside of where I grew up, that not a lot of people, one, know about cowboys and real cowboys, not just the cowboys that you see on Instagram or TikTok, because 9 times out of 10, those aren't real cowboys. Those are people wearing cowboy hats. Cowboys like to stray away from Instagram because their lifestyle is one of tradition and anti-technology even.
Sure.
So I had that realization, and then I had the realization that people think that the cowboys and Native Americans are still enemies, which is like they're the same people. And
right.
People just don't know, though, and it's not their fault. It's just that no one has tried to bring that culture to light. So that's really what we're trying to do with this film. And man, I had 3 of the good friends who are all Native American cowboys and cowgirls. We just kind of followed them around for a day in their life, raising horses, doing rodeo, ranching, and really try and give them a platform to educate and to share their stories of inspiration, because all 3 of them are very, very extremely successful in their field of cowboying. And man, I just think that it's a culture and it's a lifestyle that needs to be highlighted more.
Join him at the Chelsea at the Cosmo, which is an incredible venue. If you have not been there, it is actually one of my favorite here in Las Vegas. It is beautiful property in general. Check out the Chandelier Bar while you're there. That is awesome.
So anything different about this show as to what you brought in the past?
Man, we played the NFR after party at the Mirage the last 2 years, and man, those crowds were insane. They were they told us that we broke the attendance record the last 2 years. We broke it the first year, and then we broke that record again last year. So awesome. I just know that people that are at the NFR are cowboys and cowgirls from across the country and across the world. So that only happens once a year.
Amen.
At the NFR, you know, so having the crowd of people that live the lifestyle yet are from all corners of the country is just a really special time in general. And for me to be a small part of that and performing my style of country music that they can relate to, I think is really, really special. So I can't wait for that to happen. And the Chelsea is a beautiful theater. We opened for Cody Johnson there 2 years ago, and now to be coming back and headlining is kind of a full circle moment as well.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you back in Vegas. And best of luck on the end of the rest of the year. And
thank you.
At the end of the day, thank you for being you, because we need more originality and more real country music.
Oh, man. Well, thank you guys for having me on here, and we'll see you in a couple weeks in Vegas.
Want to experience more of the NFR? Then visit nfrexperience.com, and we invite you to subscribe to NFR Extra on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you're listening right now. If you like what you've heard on NFR Extra, We would love it if you gave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe.